Hello and welcome to day 8 of our Christmas stories. Are you ready for another story? Okay, this one is called The Russian Boy's Dream Story. Two Americans were invited to do a presentation at a large government-run orphanage of about 100 boys and girls. The children were in terrible shape. Many had been rescued from homes where they had been left alone, starved or hurt by those who took care of them. The orphanage was empty except for beds and a few chairs and stools. There were no toys, and government workers showed little interest in the children. It was nearing the holiday season. The two American volunteers scoured towns for some craft items to play with the children, but they couldn't find much. The volunteers thought that they would tell the traditional story of the Christ child being born at Christmas. Children listened attentively as they told about Mary and Joseph arriving in Bethlehem. They told how they couldn't find a place to stay, and the only place an innkeeper could offer was a stable where the animals lived. There, Jesus was born and placed in a manger. Throughout the story, the children and even the government orphanage staff workers sat in amazement as they listened. They had never heard this story. Some sat on the edges of their stools trying to grasp every word spoken. When the story was finished, the volunteers gave the children 3 small pieces of cardboard to make a crude manger. Each child was given a small paper square cut from some yellow napkins that they had brought with them because there was no colored paper found in any of the stores in the city. The children were told to tear the paper into long little strips to pretend the strips were straw for under the manger. There were small squares of cut-out flannel from the volunteer's own nightgown that were used to pretend it was the baby's blanket. And there was some tan felt that had been brought from the United States that was cut into the shape of a baby for each child. The little orphans were busy assembling their manger. Some needed help and seemed so impressed as the volunteers walked among them to see how they were doing. The children were excited to show what they had done, and some needed extra help. All went well until one volunteer visited a little table where a little orphan named Misha sat. He looked like he was about 6 years old, but because of his background, he was very small. He appeared to have finished his project. As the volunteer looked at the little boy's manger, she was startled to see that there were 2 babies in the crude manger. The volunteer asked for a translator to ask the boy why there were 2 babies in the manger instead of just 1. Little Misha, who had only heard the Christmas story this one time, related the story just as it had been told until the part where Mary put the baby Jesus in the manger. Then Misha started to put his own twist on the story, fantasizing that he was in the story himself. He said, "And when Mary laid the baby in the manger, Jesus looked at me and asked if I had a place to stay. I told him, I have no mama and I have no papa, so I don't have any place to stay. Then," she said, again in his made-up version, "Jesus told me I could stay with him. But I told him I couldn't because I didn't have a gift to give him like everybody else did. But I wanted to stay with Jesus so much because he was so sweet and so kind. So I thought about what I had and maybe I could use for a gift. I thought, and then I remembered that I could keep him warm, and that would be a good gift to give Jesus. So I asked Jesus, if I keep you warm, will that be a good enough gift for you? And Jesus told me, if you keep me warm, that will be the best gift that anybody has ever given me. So I got into the manger, and Jesus told me I could stay with him forever." As little Misha finished his story, his eyes brimmed full of tears that splashed down his little cheeks. Putting his hand over his face, his head dropped to the table, and his shoulders shook as he sobbed and sobbed. The little orphan story may have been a fantasy, but he truly had found someone, Jesus, who would never abandon him nor abuse him, someone who really would stay with him forever. And from that story we learn that it's not what you own or the presents that you get, but it's about having Jesus in your life for always that counts. What a precious story. We want Jesus with us for always, don't we? Yes, we do. We hope you have a good evening, and we'll see you tomorrow for another story.